Milio. As League's newest enchanter, Milio brings on a new angle on what it means to empower his teammates with a kit that is both easy to pick up but also rewards skill expression with some nuances in it as well. This video will be as concise and thorough of a breakdown of his kit as possible, and my aim is to get you quickly up to speed to understand Milio's champion identity and to establish the mindset to have when playing this champion. I'll touch on general concepts of Milio's purpose as a champion and what success looks like in games that you are doing well on him. We'll then discuss different components of his kit and how we can work better to optimize each one of these. This includes going over different matchups, rune optimizations, ability maxing, your build, drafting, and how to play out each phase of the game. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, we'd really appreciate a like and sub. Moving on. Let's kick off with champion identity. Milio's got pretty much the same job as most other enchanters, just with slightly different tools. He doesn't provide much in the way of peel, but he is absolutely loaded with a slew of creature comforts that can turn a good front to back comp into a great one. He's characterized by his ability to increase his teammates' range in his W, Cozy Campfire, as well as his AoE cleanse in his ult, Breath of Life. Both of these tools can absolutely propel advantages from AD carries, making him extremely scary if given time to scale. However, this also means that if his team isn't at that scaling point, it's very hard to feel like this champion can bring much to the table. So let's get into it. From the outset, Milio's kit won't be that hard for you to understand, as almost all of his effectiveness comes from abilities that are point and click or are inherently large anyways. The difficulty comes from positioning yourself to balance maximum value with appropriate risk taking, since Milio can die relatively easily if out of position, but he needs to take these risks in order to maximize his value for his team. I've broken down the purpose of each of his abilities as well as little tidbits you should know. Let's start with his passive, Fire It Up. This is kind of similar to Sona's Q, in which whenever Milio hits himself or an allied champion with an ability, he enchants the target for 4 seconds, causing their next attack or basic ability to deal bonus damage that scales with the ally's AD, and a separate instance of dot magic damage that scales off of Milio's AP. This ability has no internal cooldown, so it's gated completely by Milio's ability cooldowns. This also means that Milio's hardest scaling stat is ability haste, since Fire It Up's damage scales with your ally's AD. Let me reiterate that this is magic damage that scales off of your ally's AD. So let's say Jin has 1k AD and he W's someone, that W is literally going to deal 500 extra magic damage. While not much to scoff at when reading it, Milio's passive is going to be where the brunt of his damage is coming from in teamfights. So now in solo queue, when you're playing support and you have 4 AD champions on your team, if you play Milio as your 5th, it's not actually that bad. I would argue that front to back comps with 1 magic damage tank and a Milio would be the only sources of magic damage needed there as well. The biggest thing to keep in mind with Milio's passive is that your allies can't get multiple stacks of this at once, so skill expression here is managing when your allies' abilities are proccing his passive so that the ally gets multiple instances of Fire It Up. If your jungle Lee Sin comes to gank and you use E on his first Q, then E him again on his second Q, that Lee Sin Q just dealt up to 100% of Lee's AD as magic damage. On your abilities like your W and ultimate, this also means that you can empower your entire team with this bonus as well. Let that sink in. Milio's Q, Ultra Mega Fire Kick, is a pretty honest poke ability. It's a single target skill shot that pushes that target back and stuns them, then leading into a larger explosion that deals magic damage and slows. This is Milio's only damage ability outside of his passive, but it has pretty decent stats, especially at level 1, having 90 base damage. The first instance has about 800 to 900 range before pushing back and exploding a bit further. This is Milio's main poke tool in lane to proc spell thieves, and you can use it to harass through the wave as well by rebounding the ball off of the wave. Since it's a knockback that works linearly, it works pretty well as a peel tool to push away and disincentivize enemy engages. You cannot Q flash on Milio, similarly to Lee Sin, so please don't embarrass yourself. Also, the first part of his Q does not deal any damage actually, so you can actually walk up into tower range and hit Q1, then run out of tower range without taking any damage. It's not insanely applicable, but can result in free harass from angles that you wouldn't normally see from other enchanters. Cozy Campfire is where things get pretty interesting for Milio. Milio summons an empowerment zone at a location for 6 seconds that follows a nearby allied champion at the cast location. All allied champions in the zone will gain increased range and will heal over time. You can recast it to switch targets to follow. It also procs Milio's passive upon cast, as well as once per 3 seconds, having 550 range. The biggest thing I noticed upon testing is that Cozy Campfire will follow your ally slowly, but follows Milio much faster, pretty much twice as fast. Therefore, it may be more effective to just position Milio around important backliners, and this also disincentivizes dumping it on your front line. It can't really keep up with high mobility front lines anyway. The range increase on this also scales with your ally's champion range, and there's no cap to this. So if you wanted to pair this with Caitlyn and RFC and off someone across the lane, you probably could. Keep in mind that Cozy Campfire costs an insane amount of mana, up to 130 at rank 5 as of the time of recording, and it has a really high cooldown, starting from around 30, scaling to around 20 seconds. So if you burn this ability by accident, Milio will have a huge window of vulnerability. This applies both when playing as Milio as well as when you're laning against him, and should be the biggest thing to watch out for in lane. This is kind of similar to Renata's W. Milio's E, Warm Hugs, is a really basic shield that works on a 2-charge cooldown system that also grants movement speed. The shield does stack if you spam both shields immediately, but you do get both charges available right away once you rank it up for the first time. This means that Milio has a strong level 1 to 2 when pairing this ability with his Q, because these are 2 very high value abilities at 1 rank. For his E, I highly recommend you bind Smart plus Quick Cast so that you can instantly get the shield up on yourself without needing to move your cursor. For me, I bind it to Alt plus E. The reason for this is because it enables fast combo double shielding on your ADC and yourself in lane by pressing E on your ADC and then pressing Alt E immediately to immediately cast it on yourself without needing to move your cursor. This will make both of you fired up, granting both of you move speed and additional damage. You can also press Alt E while trading in lane while your auto attack is flying in order to make yourself fired up and proc the extra damage immediately. Because of the potential use cases for it, Milio's E has a surprising amount of skill expression baked in. Milio's ult is where he can reap an incredible amount of value and bail his team out of bad situations. It's basically a 600 radius AoE cleanse and heal with no cast time, also granting tenacity to all allies inflicted for 3 seconds. While this ability has no cast time, Milio will lock himself out of his other cooldowns for 0.75 seconds while he's jumping in the air. This will also cleanse Mordekaiser ult, by the way. I'm not sure if that's intended as of the time of this video. As much as you want to cleanse your whole team at once, you generally are probably going to reserve this ability for your backliners instead. Realistically, if your whole team is in a position to get stunned, your team is probably mispositioning somewhere, even if your team has an AoE cleanse, so it's kind of redundant to be holding it for that long. Milio's ult also grants 65% tenacity, which is pretty much as you're going to need in terms of any champion. Keep in mind that tenacity does not fully remove CC. There is a minimum duration of 0.5 seconds for any level of CC, so your teammates do not necessarily need to be building any of it at that point because it's kind of redundant. I also thought a little bit about which abilities Milio should be maxing, and it could honestly be pretty awkward at times. While investing points into Q may give you stronger laning prowess, Milio's W and E are so important that I don't think you can even afford to invest more than 1 point into Q. Because of this, I think the main ability path will be going Q, E, and W at levels 1 through 3, and then either maxing E into W or going 3 points into E and then maxing out W at level 10. This is due to the low resources and economy of the support role in general, especially in terms of EXP, and realistically you're going to end most games at around level 13 or 14, so you're not going to often get a chance to max every ability. Milio's W also has this weird dichotomy, where it's his most important ability to max, but it also provides the least value in the early game. This is why I think investing 3 points into E for laning can still be decent, as it provides for some early game stats and helps stabilize him while still affording enough points to provide maximum value from his W in the mid game. Let's touch on some potential dual partners for Milio. With the range booster on Milio's W, you immediately start thinking of some of the combos that you can go for in order to leverage extremely high range AD carries. Caitlyn immediately comes to mind for many of you, and while I think it's decent, it's probably not the best pairing for Milio, as he functions like a pocket support like a Lulu rather than a support that has kill threat. High range 1v9 hyper carry marksmen are likely going to be some of the best picks to go along with this. Imagine Jinx, Twitch, Kog'Maw, all these champs need a lot of creature comforts and safety tools in order to survive in fights, and it's going to help immensely. It also helps that all of these champs will pretty much be able to attack across the entire lane with the range boost that Milio grants, so this can make for some pretty disgusting combos. Milio also really helps other shorter range carries increase their effective range significantly, and I think it's something that's very important to consider. Champions like Xayah, Sivir, and especially Vayne will bring on a whole different variant of threat when they are brought up to Caitlyn levels of auto attack range. One of the biggest things gating these champions from succeeding as teamfights is having to take extreme risks in order to auto attack, but Milio's tools can easily allow them to leverage that. Jhin Milio is also a really good combo here because it almost functions like a Jhin Karma, actually very similarly since they both have the similar types of shield, and because of Fired Up's passive being able to scale so hard with Jin's increased levels of AD, it produces a lot of damage. One final specific pairing to watch out for that can make Milio a very aggressive pick is with Lucian. This is in a very similar realm to the Lucian Nami combo that we've seen absolutely dominate many lanes. The quick succession of Milio's shields and other abilities can introduce a very high amount of damage in the laning phase, since pressing one ability on Lucian will not only proc Milio's passive, but will also enable Lucian's passive, which empowers his next 2 auto attacks. Repeat this 3 times and you are introducing hundreds of damage of potential burst, all fronted to Lucian. Milio's passive also counts as increasing Lucian's damage, thereby also increasing the potency of First Strike, which drastically increases its gold generation in early phases. I imagine a combo for this could be when Milio hits a Q on the enemy laners, he then empowers Lucian with Cozy Campfire, enabling to dash in and proc his double shot from a further range. From that point, Milio can stagger his E's while Lucian does the rest of his combo to proc Milio's passive 3 times and get 6 empowered autos from Lucian. This pairing is very unique for Milio because this is the only pairing that I can really think of that actually converts Milio's passive playstyle into one that can heavily punish his opponents. Now let's talk about Milio's rune setup. As he's an enchanter, his best rune setup will for sure be Airy, as he'll be able to harvest value from the rune in pretty much every aspect of his kit. While Sorcery will be his main tree for the most part, Arcane Comet is also another decent rune to consider if you need more damage output in the early levels. Milio will only be able to proc this with his Q, but since his Q slows, it will give a high hit percentage to Comet, which might be what he needs in some matchups. Whichever keystone you go, the other runes you go in the rest of the tree will likely be similar. Manaflow Band, Transcendence, and Scorch/Gathering Storm will make up the rest of your page. Against engage supports and general high threat lanes, I would recommend switching to a Resolve focused tree with Guardian as your keystone. Follow this up with Font of Life, Bone Plating, and Revitalize. For your secondary tree, there are 2 options here. Out of the Sorcery and Resolve duo, you can opt for the other tree that you didn't go in your primary and just take your favorite runes I mentioned above. However, what I think is arguably stronger than both of these is actually going for Domination secondary, mainly because this unlocks the ability to go Ultimate Hunter, which can be extremely important for Milio. It's not hard for us to tell that Milio's ult is very high impact, and the only way for an AoE cleanse to really scale is to make it come up more often. Because of this, Ultimate Hunter becomes an extremely high value rune on this champ, and it should be taken almost every game. The base cooldown of Milio's ultimate starts at almost 3 minutes and only scales down to about 2 minutes, so reducing that even further is going to be extremely valuable for Milio. Pair this with either Cheap Shot, Taste of Blood, or Zombie Ward, and you have a really solid set of runes available. For your stat runes, I would take Ability Haste, Adaptive Force, and 1 Armor or MR rune, depending on the matchup. I've seen a few builds be experimented with Milio, and overall I don't think he's going to innovate too much on the enchanter recipe. Milio naturally loves the long, drawn out fights and will naturally extract a ton of value off of Moonstone, so I think it's going to be your mythic of choice in most engagements. Simply dump Cozy Campfire around your whole team, and you'll not only be dumping them with heals from that ability, you'll also be getting several procs with Moonstone at that point. If you need a faster fight, Shurelio's will also be a good swap. Your boot options are going to be a pretty clear choice here as well, as Lucids are the clear best in slot. From here, your options are also similar to other enchanters. In terms of opening items, you'll also be going for Spell Thieves most games, unless you're in a matchup where the enemy has a lot of threat, in which case I could recommend going for the Relic Shield. The reason for this is so that you can access gold generation without the need to walk up and harass the opponent, and take a risk in that sense. Generally speaking though, Milio's Q does give him relatively easy access to Spell Thieves harass in most cases though, so I would really only do this against lanes that have very high threat zones like Blitz or Pike. After picking up your core of Moonstone and Boots, you've got a few options based on what your team calls for. The most important one here is that if you need to pick up a heal cut for your team, second item is for sure the slot to do so. Unlike normal enchanter supports, I would say that Milio does not really need to pick up items like Mikhail's since he just generally has a bigger version of it already, so it's likely going to be redundant. I mean, you could get the second cleanse for the meme if your backline is constantly getting hit by CC, but at that point you might want to question if the issue is your itemization or their skill. Back to the main build though, items like Redemption and Ardent Censer are likely common takes here, since they'll naturally fit well with this kit that emphasizes clumping up together. Wrap this up with your control ward slot and you're pretty much set on your Milio build. Milio's level 1 to 2 can be pretty decent in some matchups thanks to his high value in his Q at level 1, as well as getting 2 shields at level 2 when you get your E. After this phase though, Milio will very quickly lose all of his agency in lane, and his focus will instead shift to more about survival. His overall power curve is similar to that of Bards. You have a phase of a ton of power and agency, and then it quickly ends, and then you realize you have to bend over. This is because of Milio's power being very fronted towards his AD carry. If they're not hitting their item strides, Milio's power is pretty much stripped away from him. Your main harass tool in lane is going to be your Q, since it allows you to do it from such a safe range. Use this to proc your Airy, Spell Thieves, and Mana Flow Band rune set, and you'll reap a very high amount of value from this. I do recommend staggering your Qs around your Mana Flow Band proc in order to prevent yourself from draining your mana pool early on, as Milio's mana costs are very high in the early phases, and pretty much in general. Cozy Campfire is generally going to be used for extended harass on enemies and for sustain in lane. Ideally, when you cast it, you want to be achieving both of these purposes at once. It's also a really good ability for siege lanes to punish under the enemy tower, since it allows you to harass with autos from so far away. Warm Hugs can be used for you to take light trades with auto attacks in order to proc Spell Thieves, as well as of course shielding your AD carry when they're also taking harass. Overall, the mindset here is to really take it slow and allow yourself to scale. Milio takes a long time to accelerate, and good Milio players will exhibit the patience required to reap the insane rewards this champion provides in the later stages of the game. Another way to look at it is if nothing is happening in the lane, Milio is very happy. In teamfights, Milio is generally going to function like any other enchanter would. You thrive in the backline, and you will be able to be most effective when untouched and able to use your abilities pretty much uninterrupted. Hold your Q for disjointing enemy engages on your backline, and supplement this with your shields as necessary. Milio's teamfighting style is generally one-dimensional, in that he just loves as basic of a front to back as possible. Pop cozy campfire early on in fights for your backline so they can start their DPS much earlier than normal. In that way, you can maximize the duration of the heal over the duration of a fight. Positioning is quite important on Milio, not only for his own safety, but for reaping value on his abilities. It gives you the most flexibility to cast Cozy Campfire on yourself for the double move speed on the campfire, and then adjust your body so that your teammates get the highest amount of uptime on it. The same applies for your ult. The radius is only 600, so realistically you do have to balance between peeling your backline and getting ready to disjoint CC as required. When it comes to draft, Milio probably has a really weird slot. As an enchanter with a low early game presence and low peel, most of the time Milio will likely thrive best in slower lanes as a counterpick. His kit is focused on the extended effective safety range of him and his AD carry, so his natural weakness in exchange is that he pretty much gets blasted when the enemy manages to close the gap and get in that range. So classic engaged champions like Nautilus or Leona will give him a hard time, as well as any other champion that has the tools to bring him close. Other champions that have reliable engage that negates Milio's cleanse like Jarvan or Malphite can overall give him some problems too. I do think that in these matchups that if you get over the early game hurdle and prevent a big advantage, Milio's teamfighting presence will compensate, but it's a really bad curve to get over, and you don't want to be blinding him too often for that. Milio, however, can be super disgusting in slower matchups. Range is a very unique stat that not many champions can access, and Milio being able to grant it to potentially multiple allies at once makes for some very disgusting potential. With the right bot lane pairings, Milio has the potential to outskill pretty much most supports in the game. This range allows your AD carry to potentially DPS completely uncontested. Milio also naturally finds himself happier in later parts of draft because of his ultimate, and the more forms of CC that he can cleanse, the higher value that he can bring to the table. But this is where that sort of weird dichotomy exists with this champion. He reaps value from cleansing CC, but will still have generally poor matchups to engage support champions, which is arguably the role that gets slotted with CC the most. TLDR, if you pick Milio in a composition where you can both scale relatively easily and prevent the enemy from reliably engaging on you, you'll probably be in a good spot. Overall, Milio is an easy yet high impact support whose heavy levels of AoE make him a great addition to the enchanter class. If you're new to the enchanter archetype, want another one as part of your champion pool, or just want to abuse the potential insane combinations that he brings to the table, then I highly recommend picking him up. As always, I hope this guide was insightful to you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay fresh.